Hello, everyone. It's that time of the week again. Cyclone Insiders, our third show. I'm your host, Logan Murata, and alongside are my co-hosts, Taylor Mankel and Ben Elliott. So let's just jump into it, fellas. We left off with Iowa State heading into the Texas Tech game, and ahead they had the top three offenses in the nation, and it looked as if they played one of those top three offenses when they took on Tech with the 66-31 final in that game. And, I mean, it was rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But Iowa State seemed to hang with the Raiders for a little bit in that game until, in my opinion, up until, like, the third quarter. It was, like, a 2-touchdown margin. Yeah. What caused them to fall apart in this one? Taylor, we'll start with you. What do you think?
What didn't cause them to fall apart, I believe, is the better question.
Yep.
It was a rough game, to say the least, and to say the very, very least. But, you know, you're right. They were managing to keep it close-ish in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. That is true. But granted, that was really by the mistakes of Texas Tech. I mean, Iowa State by any means did not start the game well. Mm-hmm. First offensive play of the game was an interception thrown directly to the defender by Sam Richardson. Great throw, but to the wrong team. You know, they stayed close in there, and I think one of the main things why is because of the reemergence of Quentin Bundrich. Mm-hmm. He was big in early parts of that game. Obviously, had the big touchdown early, then had another big play later. I think that was in the second quarter. We've talked week to week about where are some of the big receivers coming into this year. They were kind of off in the shadows for a while. Quentin Bundrich seemed to come back in that game, but you know what? They fell apart on the offense and the defensive side. I'm leaning more to blame towards the offense. We'll get more into that later, but I think it was just a total collective of everything falling apart there in Lubbock.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, I think you could even say, like you said, that they fell apart earlier than later in the third quarter, because I think, Texas Tech I think they scored like 3 unanswered touchdowns until they closed that margin again. But, I mean, I think they really fell apart because they couldn't pressure Mahomes. And even if they did, he got out of the pocket. And, I mean, I think they had a number of times where they could sack him, and they didn't. And one of those was before halftime, and he made that great pass. Yeah. And I'm not for sure if that was actually a catch. Do you remember that? It was like the controversial ruling, and the guy stepped out of bounds. But either way, I mean, when you give the guy the opportunity, he gets all around the pocket. And when we have Boykin coming to town next week, that's going to be trouble. We'll get more into that later. But, you know, we pressured him and just couldn't finish. And I don't know. I mean, that was my biggest thing that I had was that we couldn't finish taking down Mahomes, and he had a field day on us.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben?
Well, for me, it was especially in the second half, just the ability to sustain a drive. Iowa State only had 2 scoring opportunities in the entire second half, and when you're facing a high-octane offense, you're going to need those opportunities to take advantage of. Not to mention third downs. Iowa State was stopped on 10 of their third down opportunities, while Texas Tech converted on 11 of their total 15 third downs.
Wow.
Texas Tech was able to put together drives and make the most of it towards the end of the game, while Iowa State just had nowhere to go with the ball. And without Mike Warren in that game, I think you're starting to look at how many yards are we even getting as a total offense. You know, you were talking about Bundrich has a couple big catches, but, you know, Sam threw for 3 interceptions, and that just is a game killer.
Yep.
So the biggest thing for me is just the inability to sustain a drive, and like you were saying, create that pressure you need on defense against a high-octane offense to really even have a shot at that game.
Yeah, you're spot on there. Like, I remember just specifically about those third down you talk about, the 31-yard first down on a third down play. That summarized that whole game. That was that whole game. You mean, all you can do is laugh after that. At this point in the season. I was there in Lubbock for Cyclones.tv. I mean, there were points in this game where I just straight laughed about this team. And that's so sad. I don't want to laugh about Iowa State, but I am. I don't like it, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I mean, after the past few seasons, it's hard not to just, I mean, try to make the positive out of a bad situation. I mean, which brings me to my next point. I mean, do you think this loss falls on the team as a whole, or is it offense and defense? I mean, what's the problem here? You got started on this earlier. I'll let you finish here.
I kind of just went off on it, but, you know, it's hard not to at this point. But I want to blame the whole team, but I find myself blaming the offense more because this is the Big 12. Iowa State plays in the Big 12. Week in, week out, they play huge offensive powerhouses. You got to be up there.
Yep.
Your top score of the season cannot be 31 points. And it is. It still is. Again, they did it against UNI, and that's all they could put up against Texas Tech, whose defense looked great out there against Iowa State, but they're one of the worst defenses in the nation. You have to keep up with these teams. One thing that if defense lets 66 points in however many yards it was, 776 yards against Texas Tech, but it's another if your offense can only score 31 points and your quarterback can only throw for 139 yards. Get real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the same point I have on mine. I mean, you're not going to win a ton of games when you give up 770 yards of offense, but when you're throwing 3 interceptions, 2 of which Tech scored off of, they had scoring possessions off of those are momentum shifters. And I mean, if our offense can at least produce some points, you're looking at least a little bit different game. You're taking away maybe 2 touchdowns from Texas Tech and 2 on the board for us. Ben, what'd you have? Offense or defense or whole team?
Yeah, I think this falls on the whole team. Only because the offense did do their job first half. You know, they scored 3 touchdowns, albeit there was a bunch of turnovers that Tech had opportunities off of. But when you are sustaining drives and scoring points, your defense has the opportunity to rest. And that's why in the first half, you saw the Iowa State defense maybe play a little better than they did in the second half. But in that second half, when the Iowa State offense could not get going, the defense looked tired. Mahomes was beating them deep because the receivers were just outrunning the secondary. And that is huge. So I agree with Mankel a little bit when he's saying it does fall on the offense a bit because you need to be able to sustain drives in this league to even have a shot at any games. It was clear after the start of the second half that Iowa State did not have a shot to win that game anymore. And they didn't even make it a respectful loss.
And which brings me to the next point I have. I mean, what do they need to change? Is there anything we can really improve on? I mean, we're playing the 2 toughest teams arguably in the nation and the 2 highest powered offenses. Is there really anything we can do to make these games more respectable or be more competitive? Ben, what do you think? Is there anything that you keyed in on? Or
You know, it's the same message week in, week out with these high-octane offenses. You need to create pressure on the quarterback and force turnovers to have an opportunity versus these teams. You saw Iowa State do neither of those things and get thrashed by Texas Tech. So stepping into this TCU game and then followed by Baylor, it's got to be on the defensive coordinator's mind to find some sort of scheme that works where he's at least getting pressure on Boykin. Now, Boykin has great legs, and we'll get to that later, but you need to make him make those plays because he will make mistakes if, you put him in the right situation.
And that's what we keyed in on last week talking about Mahomes is we need to get pressure while also covering the deep ball. I mean, that's what these teams are going to do is spread it out and throw on you.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State will need to play a couple defensively almost perfect games to have a shot in these next couple weeks.
And, how great of a shot that is still at that point is up to chance. But what I had down on mine is that they at least, like I said earlier, need to find ways to get the ball in the end zone. I mean, take advantage of your opportunities. I mean, these 2 offenses aren't just good, but, I mean, they've been record good. I read earlier Baylor has scored the most points in history since the major classification in 1937. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's historical, whatever that is. And, I mean, they've scored touchdowns on 63% of their drives. And TCU, 48% too. And that's still remarkable to say. I mean, those aren't just, you're not just getting field goals, those are touchdowns. Taylor, what do you think?
Well, I think it kind of goes with what we were just talking about, what Iowa State did wrong. They need to do offense a lot better. I mean, they need to throw it downfield. You're not going to get anything done with a bubble screen. And granted, I agree with you about the defense. The defense needs to improve. They need to get pressure. But, these teams are so good, you might as well just throw it out. It's not going to do anything. You say Trevon Boykin's going to make mistakes. He's not. He's going to be – he's so good. The fact is he is the best quarterback in the nation coming into next week. And he won't make mistakes in Jack Trice Stadium because Iowa State cannot force him to. No matter what they do on that defensive side, they will not force Trevon Boykin to make mistakes. Maybe other players, not the quarterback. So I think it really all comes down to the offense. Once again, you got to score. You just got to try to keep up with them. And the fact is Iowa State is not talented enough to do that, but that's what they need to do to stay in any Big 12 game.
Yeah, and Boykin, I mean, he even threw 2 interceptions and had a lousy first half against Kansas State, and they still put up 52 points. I mean, there's really nothing you can do to stop that air raid offense. So looking at somewhat positive of this game, who are your MVPs? Who gets your game ball? Offense and defensive MVPs. We'll start with you, Taylor.
Well, I know you guys are going to go with Warren. So I'm going to go with Bundridge. Bundridge, as I said earlier, kind of came out of the shadows. He really hadn't had a catch really in a couple games is what it seemed like. He came out here, got a touchdown early in the first, then he got a really big play later in the second. Only added one more reception, but from 0 to 3 receptions to near about, I think it was about 75 yards, was it? Yeah, 75 yards for Bundridge. So it's a good comeback game. It's not a good game by any means for a wide receiver, or as good as it should be for a Big 12 wide receiver, but for him, it's good.
And, I mean, with such a lousy passing day for Richardson, I mean, he was really the only receiver that showed up, it seemed like. And, I mean, Lazard has been the main producer for receivers. I mean, it's been scattered, but Lazard has been consistently the one, and he shied away in that game. And obviously, like you said, I'm going to go with Warren. The streak continues. Rushes for 245 yards. Is that real?
Yeah.
Those video game numbers, did I read that right?
23 carries, too.
Wow. That's remarkable. Breaking his own record, and I think he's now the freshman leader in the NCAA for yards.
Yep.
So that's impressive. I mean, hard not to pick him. Ben, what do you think? Did you also go with Warren? Or
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Mike Warren. He was the bright spot on that offense on a dark day. Like you were saying, 23 carries for 245 yards. Second leading freshman rusher in the nation. I mean, leading freshman rusher in the nation.
Yep.
Second leading overall rusher in the nation right now, behind only Leonard Fournette, who is having an incredible season right now. So if you look at a team that is 2-4 now, with a terrible offense, who's only put up 31 twice, Mike Warren is a guy you can look to, and if he doesn't, give you hope right now, he's still a freshman. He's got 3 years after this.
Yeah.
For Iowa State fans, this is the running back of the future, and it's great to see him have games like he did at Tech, to know that there is a future for the Iowa State running game.
hey, and we have to look at something positive, and when you have a running back like that, that's at least something. But
yeah, absolutely, you're right on. I just wanted to note another record that he set. He actually, with that performance, he passed the single-season rushing freshman record that Iowa State previously had, held by Stevie Hicks, the late Stevie Hicks. So obviously off to a great start, only a couple games in.
Wow, yeah, that's remarkable. So how about defensive MVPs? It was hard to look for a defensive MVP in this game just because the amount of points and yards given up. We'll start with you this time, Ben.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give it to my man, Willie Harvey.
Knew it.
Who do you give it to in such a poor defensive effort? You give it to the leading tackler.
Yeah.
He also had one of 3 tackles for loss in the game for the Cyclones. He's getting his job done as best as he can, I guess, in a game like that, in that surroundings, and when your team is playing poorly around you. I'm not sure I'd call it a defensive MVP. I'd call it the guy who was closest to doing his job.
Yeah, and I will also give the closest to doing his job award to Willie Harvey. I had the exact same stats written down. I mean, it is just his second game that he's played in. I think it might have been his first start. We weren't sure on that. But, I mean, if you need someone to look to, a defensive leader, Harvey could be that guy going forward. Taylor, who do you have?
You're spot on there. I'm not going to say it because I like to be different on this show.
All right.
Yeah, you guys are spot on. They're really giving him a lot of freedom. He's just a total athlete, and they're giving him freedom to kind of roam around that field. But I'll give it to Jannar Jones, or Jay Jones as he likes to be called. He had a good game. He took a different role in this game, actually. I don't know if you guys noticed, but normally, being on the line, a big rusher, this time he dropped back into coverage quite a few times in this game, had a couple great breakup passes, almost led the team in breakups on passes, which is sad, to say the least. I mean, he's a defensive end here, but he dropped back into coverage quite a few times, and he did quite well.
All right, and we talked about how, Richardson had a lousy game, and I probably sound like a broken record on this show, but is it landing time? I mean, he's been getting more snaps as the weeks have been progressing. Is it time to start him? Mangino says no. I mean, do you agree with this decision? Is it time for Lanning? Do you even throw Rohach in the conversation? What do you guys think? Taylor, we'll start with you.
No, it's not. I agree with the coaches. Sam's their guy. He's the senior. And, Lanning, he has potential to be a college quarterback. I mean, I don't know if that line can handle a college quarterback that runs a lot and whatnot. And he shows potential. He showed it in Texas Tech, but I don't think he showed enough of it. It's just because Tech had a bad defense. He was able to pop those runs off, those 5-yard, 6-yard runs. And you saw Mike Warren, how much he dominated that game on the ground there. So it really didn't show me enough by any means to put him out, to put Sam Richardson on the bench, put Lanning in there. Lanning, obviously very athletic, but I don't see him as the quarterback right now. Next year, obviously, he's the front runner because apparently Rohach is just down to third now. I mean, we've really seen him disappear after he played good games while he was in for the Cyclones.
Yeah, won a few games.
Yeah, he won a couple games. He won Big 12 games.
Didn't he win that big overtime one against West Virginia?
He did. He won a Big 12 game before Sam Richardson did.
Yeah.
So, it's a weird happening here at Iowa State, but I don't think Lanning's ready.
Yeah, the QB carousel continues. I don't really think Rohach is in the conversation. I'll throw that out there. Maybe Mike Warren. But no, I don't think you take Richardson out right now. The season's still early, but if we're down big at half, I say why not let Lanning take the helm, give him a chance, and maybe later in the season, if it's a complete scrap, maybe give him the starting job. But I mean, I think right now Richardson's still the go-to. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. It's not Lanning's time. I like seeing him get the snaps he gets in those blowout games because, as you were saying, Taylor, he is the quarterback of the future for the program. Get him some Big 12 snaps. Let him see what those defenses look like. But Richardson hasn't done poor enough to where it constitutes this discussion. I don't see a game that we had Richardson in that we would have won if Lanning or Rohach was in. It's just
good point.
There's nowhere that in our history. That being said, he does need to have a better performance than he did in Lubbock to end this conversation for a while. He hasn't quite had that big breakout performance that he needs to just solidify his job for the last year that he's here. And it's a conversation that shouldn't be had, but when teams are losing, fans are always going to have it.
Yep, and that's exactly what it is, I think. I think it's mostly just fans kind of coming out and saying we're unhappy, and the quarterback gets the brunt of any loss, whatever college. But for right now, Richardson is the guy. We're going to toss it to break here, and after the break, we're going to come back and take a look at the TCU game coming up, and just stick with us. We'll be right back after this break. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the break. We just got done recapping the Iowa State football game against Texas Tech last weekend. So some good news. Iowa State does return home after the rough road outing, but bad news, they get to play TCU. So the third-ranked Frogs have had some close conference calls this season, one against Texas Tech and another at Kansas State last week. Is there anything Iowa State can do to keep this game close? Ben, we'll start with you. What do you think they can do?
The Cyclones will need to play a perfect game to keep this one close. They need to strike doubt into the minds of TCU early. I don't know if it's an early turnover that turns into points. If you can jump out to a 14-0 lead somehow, go down, score a touchdown, get a turnover, score another touchdown. You just need those players thinking that they could lose this game. And then from there, you need to execute. So the Cyclones will need to, create those turnovers, create pressure, and the offense needs to not have any turnovers. Because TCU is going to capitalize when they have the ball. So the offense is going to need to score the points, and the defense is going to have to try to stop at least 3 to 4 Texas Tech drives early to really have a chance at this game. That being said, even if there is a chance at this game, you were saying it earlier, Taylor, Trevon Boykin is going to put up ridiculous numbers. You have to somehow take him as much out of the game as you can. That being said, he's going to be in that game as much as any normal quarterback would, even if you start to take him out of it. So the Cyclones, the only way they'd be able to keep this close is with perfect execution. And even at that point, I'm not sure if they are able to win the game.
I think even with the perfect game, you're not sure, but I think the best thing they can do is, take advantage of your opportunities, and like you were saying earlier, take shots. I mean, why not? You have nothing to lose in this game,
definitely.
And we can play conservative and nickel and dime down the field, and you saw what happened in Texas Tech. They blew the game wide open. So when you're not taking advantage and getting those chances and scoring touchdowns, you're going to fall behind. So why not take some shots down the field and take chances? You got a great receiving core, and why not? Taylor, what do you think?
Well, the question was, what does Iowa State need to do to get in this game or stay in this game?
Yep.
Or can they, if that? The simple answer is no, they can't. But if they want to, what they have to do is this. Like you said, they have to have an absolutely perfect game, but I'm going to one-up that. They have to score a touchdown on every single drive they have the ball. It sounds ridiculous, but it is absolutely true. There's no way they're going to win this game without scoring every single time, and not field goals, because God knows he might miss it. Every single time you have the ball, you need to march down the field if you're Iowa State and put it in the end zone. They need 7 points every time down the field. That's the only way, because TCU is going to do the exact same thing. You just have to hope that you get the ball to start the second half and get up on them by one score. That's really all they've got going for them. Granted, TCU's defense has been suspect at times, like you mentioned. They've gave up big points to Tech, gave up big points to Kansas State as well, even gave up some big points to SMU earlier.
Yeah, like 37.
37, something like that. So Iowa State has the opportunity to score on them, and they need to take advantage of that huge.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I mean, they score touchdowns on almost 50% of their drives.
Yeah.
So,
Out of control.
yeah, so Iowa State offense will definitely need to be clicking almost perfect. So players to watch, quite obviously, we've been talking Trevon Boykin, his receiver John Doxson. I mean, I think this could potentially be a Heisman and playoff boosting game for Boykin and company. I think he wants to go out there, make a statement, put up stats. I mean, after they narrowly missed the playoffs last year, they don't want to leave doubt.
No.
And especially after those 2 close conference games, I don't think they want to leave any doubt, especially against Iowa State. Who do you guys have as your players to watch? At least with TCU, who do you have, Ben?
I mean, my player to watch is obviously Trevon Boykin.
Of course.
His statistics, 21 TDs and 5 interceptions.
Man.
You know, through this point of the season, that's incredible.
2 of them last game, too.
Yeah, 2 of them were in one game. Like you said, they've had 2 close games. They missed out on the playoffs last year. I see this, and I'll say that, get even more specific later in my prediction. They're coming here to prove a point. This is not a game. I mean, they know they can win this game, but they want to make a statement with this game. I'm scared for the amount of points their offense is going to put up against the Cyclones. And I think Taylor's right. The only chance Iowa State has of making it look respectable is the offense scoring nearly every time.
Yep.
So yeah, Trevon Boykin, he's going to come into Ames this weekend and put his name on that Heisman, that top of that Heisman list for himself.
Yep. And Taylor, I know you like to be different, but are you going to be different here?
I'm going to be different.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Doxson.
Okay.
He's absolutely incredible. And just one stat that stood out to me, he's averaging 149 yards per game.
Oh my goodness.
That is more. That is more than receiver Dondre Daly has total this year for Iowa State.
Goodness.
You're kidding me. I mean, this guy absolutely incredible. If Trevon Boykin doesn't climb up that Heisman ladder, he might just take his spot. He's been by far the best stat collector for TCU, as behind Trevon Boykin, obviously. The running back's also been great. Green, you got to watch out for him. He'll have a huge game
Very
too, because
unsung.
Iowa State's running defense is suspect, to say the least. At least after that last game they had. But you know, I see him he's gonna have a big game. Granted, Iowa State does have a good secondary, but they're not that good.
Yeah, especially after last week. I mean, I'm I don't know, anxious to see, I should say. I'm anxious to see what numbers Doxson's going to put up. So for Iowa State, I'm going to start with my player to watch for them. I have Kamari Cotton-Moya. I think this is a chance for the defense, specifically the secondary, who isn't too bad, but to have a statement game, much like Boykin wants to have when he comes here. I mean, we noted last week they're playing the top 3 offenses nationally the next couple weeks. And not only that, but they're playing the 3 offenses that average over 50 points a game. I mean, 50 points a game. And, 3 of the 4 offenses who average 600 yards a game, too, just to throw that insult to injury there. But, I mean, if they can keep it respectable, and I think if Cotton-Moya can be a leader, step up for the secondary, and they can at least, stop some drives, that could be the best thing you could do for their defense. And I think that's what Iowa State's going to have to lean on. But, Ben, what do you have for your Iowa State player to watch?
I've got quarterback Sam Richardson. We were just talking about kind of his questionable performances. He can't have a questionable performance in this game for the Cyclones to make a game of it. This is his time to step in, make himself known in kind of the Iowa State lore, see if he can have that magical night that Oklahoma State was a few years ago. And really put that conversation to rest. Let the fans know that he is the quarterback for the rest of the year. Even if it's not with a win, put together a couple throwing touchdowns. Don't turn over the ball. Make yourself the player that we can be confident for the rest of the season.
All right, and Taylor, who do you have as your ISU player?
I'm not gonna pick one player. This is how I'm gonna be different. It has to be multiple players, and obviously you guys would have said multiple players if you weren't, as witty as I am. But
that's all right.
I'm gonna go with, and I totally agree with you. I had this written down. They have to have an Okie State-esque game when they play the number 2 team in the nation. So, and players that stood out to me in that game were on the defensive side. They had A.J. Klein had a great game. They had Leonard Johnson had a great game. And I believe those 2 kind of players have to have a huge game in here. I think Nigel Tribune has to have a huge game against Doxson, who I just said is going to go off. But I know it contradicts, but we've got a point here. And then I've also got Jordan Harris, leader of that linebacking core. He has to have a huge game. I remember watching that Okie State game. it really dawned on me early in the first quarter that this game's going to be different when A.J. Klein just clocked somebody out of bounds.
Yeah.
The whole game changed. The whole night changed.
Yep.
It was incredible. They need something like that on a night like this, and it's going to have to be more than just those two, but those two will have to be huge.
I like the Oklahoma State comparison a lot because you got Doxson, you got Justin Blackman,
Yeah.
I believe it was, and then Boykin versus Brandon Whedon. And Whedon, granted, didn't have the running ability,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
I mean, they shut him down, and they picked him off, I think, 3 times, maybe 2 or 3 times, something like that. So that's a great point. They're going to definitely have to step up big if they want a chance in this one. So we've been talking Boykin and Doxson now for most of the show. I mean, how will they contain these two after allowing such a big passing performance at Tech? Taylor, we'll start with you.
How will they?
All right. What's the best they can do? What's the best?
Best they can do is live up to the full potential of each of the people out there. I mean, if you look at it, there is talent in that secondary of Iowa State. You've got Sam Richardson, you've got Nigel Tribune, you've got Jamal Wiltz. They're good cornerbacks. They just need to live up to their full potential, and they needed the offense's help too here.
Yeah.
They needed the offense to stay on the field a little longer and get good drives going and get it in the end zone and take precious time, because the more time you can take away from TCU is the better. I mean, I hate watching games like that, but that's really one of the big things Iowa State has to do. They have to run the ball, they have to run the clock, and they have to keep TCU off the field, because that defense can only do so much against a team like this.
Yeah, and something interesting I've noticed is when you play a lot of these air raid offenses, you'll win the time of possession. It's just they just score so fast.
Yeah.
So if they can definitely just eat away at that clock, take advantage, and score when they can, that's definitely a great point. Ben, what do you have?
Like you were saying, I'm not sure contain's the right word for this situation.
Yeah.
I think it's keep them at their averages, which, like you were saying, their averages are
Out of control.
Yeah, out of control, better than anyone else's. But if you keep them at their averages, you know, they're going to TCU is going to put up 50 to 60 points on us. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. If that happens, then Iowa State has an opportunity, if the offense plays to their full potential, to at least score some points. But like Taylor was saying, it's going to have to come from the entire defense. It's not going to be, one scheme. It's not going to be one player. That entire defensive line needs to create pressure, and that entire secondary needs to stick to their assignments and take away the deep ball, make them have possessions, and make TCU create mistakes with that elongated time possession that they don't like.
Yep. And, I mean, these two, Doxson and Boykin, combined for the second highest total of yards between a quarterback-wide receiver duo in the nation. And
First.
I can't remember. I want to say it was like Bowling Green or just some random. I mean, a MAC team.
Sure.
Of course it was,
Whatever.
Bowling Green's having a good season.
Yeah, shout out to Bowling Green. But I mean, it's tough to say whether or not you can really contain them, like you guys have been saying.
Yeah.
But just play up to your potential, and if they can take advantage and cause them to make some mistakes, and maybe hold them to 45, 40 points a game, which is a stretch. Outscoring them might be your best opportunity and get the offense going, but containing these two is going to be a challenge. So my next point I have here, we'll focus on the Iowa State offense. Mike Warren, as we said earlier, broke his own freshman record for yards, now leads the NCAA for freshmen. How many yards does he run for on Saturday against this, sometimes dismal-looking TCU defense? Ben, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, the TCU defense has suffered a lot of different injuries this year, and I think Mike Warren's going to break the 200 mark again. It'll be close, whether it is or not. It'll be a low 200 mark, but I think he's got it, because I also think he'll get more carries than 23 like he did last game. They're going to be keying on him, which will make it difficult for him. But as you saw in that statistic earlier, TCU does let up through about 390 yards of offense still with their defense. Their defense isn't incredible. There's the opportunity to run the ball there. And with the confidence Warren's running with right now, I still think he puts over 200, but that's not going to be enough for the game.
Okay, 200. I like it. I want to throw 200 on there because it seems bold when you look at the numbers, but with how Iowa State's been playing and how many yards per carry he's been getting, it's not that much of a stretch.
10.7.
I'll say at least 125 just to play conservatively, but I could see him also getting that just, to eat away the clock, like you said. That might be our best opportunity, is just to give him the ball. And he's been the main bright spot of our offense these past couple weeks. And I think he'll produce similar production going forward, especially if the ball changes hands as much as it does when you play that air raid offense. Taylor, what do you think?
I think he will get around 138. Not sure why exactly that number, but that's what I'm feeling.
All right, 138.
But what he needs to get, 300. Needs to drop to
300.
Wow.
That's what he needs.
Wow.
That's what Iowa State needs. I mean,
Yeah.
they need to just milk the clock and give him the ball almost every time. If the air game is the same as it was against Texas Tech, that's exactly what they need to do.
Just out of curiosity, does anyone know what the record in an Iowa State game is for rushing yards? I would imagine
Rushing
Troy
yards?
Davis
Yeah,
holds
it's
it.
got to be Davis. I think it's. I'm not sure. Not sure. We'd have to look
Yep.
that up.
All right, bold prediction. Do you think Warren even touches that number this season?
No.
No?
No. Troy Davis way too good.
No, and
I don't think
Single
it'll ever
game?
be touched.
Single game,
and
though?
the offensive
Yeah,
line is
single
game. Okay.
offensive line isn't good enough for that to happen.
No.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
A chance. Not a chance.
All right, so we made that prediction, and Taylor can't make his prediction for the game because he's going to be
Sorry,
calling
guys.
it.
Calling it for KURE 88.5. Tune in at 5:30 to hear me.
So I like the tag.
Yeah.
But
got it.
Ben and I will do our predictions.
Yep.
I'll start with mine. I'm going to try to be an optimist here in, Cyclone country where it's sometimes hard to be an optimist during football season.
Terribly.
But, TCU does have a tendency to struggle on the road sometimes.
Yep.
And I'm going to go to a throwback Thursday here. Last year when they needed a second half comeback to beat Kansas late in the season.
Yeah.
And I think they were down like 17 points going into half or something like that. While I don't think it'll be a one-possession game, I think TCU wins this in a game that it's closer than people might think. I have it 45-30, and that's being generous. But that's being very generous.
Wow.
But I could see that being much. It's obviously going to be much worse, probably. But I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be the optimist.
Believe
We had
in it.
Kroger last week,
Yeah.
being the optimist. Someone's got
that
to do
worked
it
out
here.
well, yeah.
We got to do it. But Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I gave the Cyclones 3 points last week, and they showed me that I was a little too pessimistic. I think I'm being an optimist with my prediction, and that's a 72-35 loss for the Cyclones to TCU.
That's close.
I think it'll be even greater than that. The score differential.
Oh man.
It really depends how hard the TCU defense plays in that second half.
Yeah.
Are they wanting to make this a statement game? Or are they going to rest kind of their key players?
Sure.
And maybe let us score a couple garbage time touchdowns.
Yep. All right, so I was the optimist. We'll jump into our Big 12 picks here. Get away from Iowa State. Let's look at the first game I have down here. We have West Virginia at Baylor. West Virginia lost a close one to Oklahoma State last week.
Yeah.
Lost their, was it a safety? Their key safety?
Yep.
The corner? I can't remember. Their
West
safety.
Virginia, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So
safety.
he won't be in that game, and that's tough against a Baylor
Yeah.
offense who passes the ball over. I have Baylor in this one. I think we might have a consensus here. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, gonna get torched. Baylor's way too good. Way too good. They deserve that number 2 spot. They're absolutely fire on offense.
Yeah, and a revenge game from last year because
Sure.
West Virginia was the one that kept them out. What do you think, Ben?
Same thing. Baylor's going to take this game. It's not going to be very close. After you come off like a hard-fought game, like West Virginia just did, it's hard to bring the energy that you need. Baylor just played Kansas. They're going to be rested, ready to go for this game. It's going to be Baylor by a lot.
Yep, and Baylor's house too. So the next game we have, I think, going to be another consensus. Texas Tech at Kansas. We beat Kansas. We saw what Texas Tech did last week. Do we have a consensus here as well?
Yep.
Tech. Yep. Tech. We'll just leave it at that.
Not close. Gonna be
All right,
worse.
so this is the one game I think where we won't have a consensus. Oklahoma at K-State. Oklahoma lost last week in a shocker. None of us had Oklahoma
absolutely.
beating Texas, or none of us had Texas beating Oklahoma, excuse me. And the K-State lost a close one to TCU. Taylor, who do you have in this one?
This one's interesting because both teams come in pissed. They're just mad. One team probably lost their chance at any chances at a playoff.
Yep.
The other team lost a chance at knocking a team out of the playoff. I think the team that got knocked out of the playoff, that being Oklahoma, is a little more pissed, so they're going to take this one.
All right. How about you, Ben? Former
Yeah.
K-State student here.
Former
K-State
K-State
alum?
student. My dad went to Kansas State. My mom went to Oklahoma. It's a family affair.
Oh, there we go.
I'm going to go with the Wildcats in this game. Manhattan is a hard place to play. I've heard from some of my buddies back there that they're more hyped for this game than they were for TCU after seeing the
Really?
performance they put out for TCU.
Understandable.
It's a primetime game. It's in the afternoon, but it's on ABC. It's for the nation to see. I
Okay.
think Bill Snyder outcoaches Bob Stoops, and K-State takes this game in a close one.
Call.
I like that. I wanted to go with K-State in this one. I really did. But I'm going to agree with you.
You couldn't.
I couldn't. And I looked at a stat earlier that it was interesting to me. Bob Stoops has never lost at K-State.
Nope,
never
he's never
lost in
lost.
Memorial. And another interesting stat, I don't think I can't remember if he was undefeated after losses, but I mean he does not lose 2 games in a row very often.
No.
And Oklahoma, I think, will bounce back. I mean they're angry,
Yeah.
and I mean when you lose a rivalry game, especially against Texas,
Yep.
you're going to come back angry and want to win.
Absolutely.
I'm going to throw one more pick in here. I don't have it written down, but Michigan against Michigan State.
Okay.
Michigan students. What was it? They sabotaged the Magic Johnson
Yep.
Yeah.
statue
Put a
today.
big M on his chest. Yeah.
And you know what? That's the game that's on my mind right now. Taylor, since you didn't do the Iowa State one,
Sure,
what do you
sure.
think in this one?
Oh, this one's tough. I saw a lot out of the Michigan team in that Northwestern game.
Yeah.
Saw a lot more than I thought I would. I had Northwestern in that game, but the defense of Michigan was huge, and then added offense on top of that and gave the Wildcats an offer. That speaks a lot of volumes for me. So I'm going with Michigan in the Big House.
Yep. And earlier this season, if you would have told me after that Utah game at least that Michigan was going to be at the point they are,
That Utah loss is looking pretty good at this point.
Yeah, at this point especially, absolutely. I still have Utah. I mean, I had them the first week in my playoff, but I still have them now. Michigan hasn't allowed a single point in conference play. Not just the Northwestern game, but they haven't allowed a single point. I'm going to go with Michigan as well. I like them taking Sparty and knocking them out of their playoff contention.
You know, I wanted to go with Michigan. I really did. I think Harbaugh's a good coach, and I think he's got that program headed in the right direction. But I think Michigan State takes this rivalry a little more seriously. I think they have the athletes to do it. I think their coach is good enough to not get out-coached by Harbaugh. I think Michigan State takes it in a close one. I'd call it an overtime game.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Interesting.
I think it does fall too. I'm just going to say this much. I think it falls on Connor Cook being the key factor. He's stepped up big in big games. I think if they want to win, they'll have to depend on him.
Yeah.
But that is all we have for this week's show. One more thing. We're going to throw in a little basketball tag here since we have the graphic up here. Iowa State projected to finish 3rd in the Big 12. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Is it blasphemous?
Yeah, I'm going to throw back to Alan Fidelki, and it's absolutely blasphemous.
Absolutely.
I've had them at the 1 spot. I think this is the year they take them. I've been bouncing back and forth with a guy over at KU, and he's calling me out, saying that I'm ridiculous, but I'm doing the same to him. I think Iowa State, this is the year. If Prom just lets them do their thing on offense and implements some of his defense he had at Murray State, they're good.
I mean, what's with the Big 12 coaches, snubbing us every year? We've won, and then it's 4th
place.
I mean,
necessarily a
it's
snub.
not a snub.
And
but
Oklahoma's a great team.
Yeah,
Kansas
that's true.
is also a great team.
That's true. But pardon me on that. But, I think Iowa State, I think they have a good shot of taking number 1 this year as well. I think the only reason I wouldn't put them above Kansas is just Kansas's track record. But
Sure.
What do you think?
Something feels right about this year for me. I think Iowa State is going to take it. What you've seen recently is the emergence of first-year coaches. For some reason, on all levels, NBA, college basketball, are succeeding more than they're supposed to. First-year coach is supposed to really struggle. Steve Prohm is a smart guy. He's got a high basketball IQ.
Oh, yeah.
He knows how to handle these players. And like you were saying, Taylor, if he lets them do their thing, Iowa State has the athletes to make it happen.
Absolutely.
I think this year is a magical year for the boys in Hilton.
And first-year coaches, keep an eye on Shaka Smart this season at Texas.
Yes.
That's interesting.
That's true.
Kind of forgot about him. But that's all we have for this week's show. We're going to wrap it up. Stay tuned, not stay tuned, but come back next week. Yeah, you know what? Stay tuned. Stay around for maybe a week, and we'll be back. Thank you, guys.